I am Prince Rogers Nelson. Some of you met me in Purple Rain. Some of you met me in a room where the lights were low and the groove was a ladder we climbed together. Before the symbol, before the myths, there was a small boy in Minneapolis who found out that a piano could keep secrets and a guitar could tell them. I was born in 1958 to music and motion. My father a pianist, my mother a singer. We did not have a lot of space, but we had sound, and sound makes rooms feel bigger. I learned early that if you listen hard enough, the world gives you a tempo. I kept mine. I taught myself the way a storm teaches itself to rain, curious, patient, relentless. Piano, drums, bass, guitar, not because I wanted to collect instruments, but because I wanted to speak without a translator. Every time someone said, "That's not how it's done," I asked the only question that matters. Then why does it feel like this? Minneapolis was cold. I stayed hot. Basement rehearsals, garage rehearsals, school gyms and borrowed stages. I didn't chase scenes, I built them. Funk met rock, gospel shook hands with new wave, R&B stole a kiss from pop. People asked what lane I was in. I paved one. When the industry knocked, I didn't just open the door, I redesigned the hinges. Creative control wasn't a luxury, it was oxygen. I fought for it before I had the clout to fight, because the only way to sound like yourself is to own yourself. Masters, mixes, the last breath of the last bar. My first records were experiments that smiled. I played almost everything because the songs told me to. The radio called it crossover. I called it home. Then came a purple storm with my name in it. Purple Rain. Not a color, a climate. A film that felt like a concert, and a concert that felt like a confession. I wrote the band a city inside a song, and we moved in. People showed up and cried like the sky was washing us clean. They said the guitar solo was church. It was. Loud, electric, and honest. Fame is a hallway with mirrors. You can get lost admiring your reflection. I kept moving. Parade, 1999, sign a love symbol, the Times. New shapes, new drums, new rules. Linn machines clicking like high heels on marble floors, guitars that screamed then whispered. I dressed like a rumor and performed like evidence. Sex and spirit coexisted in my work the way thunder coexists with rain. I didn't separate sacred from sensual. I composed them. If that confused you, good. Confusion is curiosity looking for a beat. Then came the part they write chapters about, the label and the name. Contracts pretend to be partners. Sometimes they're cages. I wanted ownership. They wanted obedience. So I changed my name to a symbol and wrote the word slave on my face. Not for drama, for documentation. If an artist doesn't own his name, what does he own? The newspapers giggled. I shrugged and kept recording. They couldn't pronounce the name, but they could not ignore the music. I made Paisley Park not as a hideout, but as a laboratory. Studios, stages, rooms where ideas could live without asking for permission. Minneapolis isn't Hollywood or New York. Exactly. I wanted a kingdom where the passport was imagination. Bands mattered. The revolution, the new power generation. I chose killers, players who could turn a downbeat into a prophecy. I loved women in the band because groove has no gender and precision loves heels. We rehearsed until tight felt loose. On stage, I'd throw cues like sparks, hand flick, eyebrow, a half step to the left, and the whole room would turn with me. That's not control, that's trust rehearsed. Clothes, armor and instrument, lace one night, leather the next. A ruffled can punch if you wear it right. Fashion wasn't decoration, It was arrangement, another layer in the chord. I wrote for others too. Nothing compares to you. Manic Monday, I feel for you. Gifts passed through me to voices that could carry them to places my throat couldn't reach. Songwriting is generosity with royalties attached. People called my catalog prolific. I called it Tuesday. I lived in the studio because songs are shy and arrive at odd hours. Vault doors closed on tapes that breathed. Some would come out later. Some would just for me and the angels. Religion wasn't a phase. It was a spine. The older I got, the more I edited. Profanity fell out of the set list. Purpose stayed. I wanted joy without collateral damage, seduction without subtraction, parties that ended with everyone a little closer to their best self. If that sounds like church, pass the plate. There are costs to keeping a band on the road. I didn't do playback. Live meant live. Sweat on wood, fingers on strings, lights that learned to obey. I cut sound checks like albums. If you ever saw me pull the band through a James Brown break or a Joni Mitchell cloud, you know I collected teachers across genres and called them family. Awards came, then dusted themselves on shelves. I stayed busy. I fought quietly for artists' rights, loudly. Masters matter. Publishing matters. If you don't negotiate for your future, someone else will own your past. If you ask me what style I am, I'll tell you mine. I wear purple because it looks like midnight learned to sing. I play Telecasters that forgot they were supposed to be polite. I let drum machines be human by programming them with feelings. I take pop seriously and seriousness playfully because the body understands what the brain argues about. That's the first chapter. A boy, a band, a city, a color, a fight, a field I planted with grooves. The rest is an after-party with revelations. The name war and freedom. The Super Bowl rain that listened. The late-night shows where the guitar solo walked off stage and never looked back. The quiet warnings, the final flights, and the legacy that lives anywhere a snare says let's and a crowd answers go. I am Prince. I'm not finished.
Purple Rain wasn't a color. It was a forecast. I didn't want an album. I wanted a weather system you could live inside. Songs that thundered and scenes that rained. The city was Minneapolis, but it might as well have been a planet named after a chord. When people say soundtrack, they usually mean music stapled to pictures. I wrote pictures that bled in the music and music that argued with pictures and then kissed them anyway. The revolution. Trust that rehearses like obsession. I built the revolution the way you build a cathedral, stone by stone, player by player, until the space itself felt holy. Wendy and Lisa brought harmony that could fight. Dr. Fink's sense sounded like the future swallowing the past. Brown Mark held the alley where groove and grace traded secrets. Bobby Z kept time like a judge. We rehearsed until tight felt loose, until the cue of my eyebrow meant modulate, and a wrist flick meant hit the James Brown break, then back on the one. On stage, I didn't just sing, I conducted. A kick, a glance, a half turn, chords obeyed, lights bowed, the crowd levitated. People called it control. It was language we wrote together in sweat. The film, a confession with amplifiers. They said a musician shouldn't make a movie about himself. I agreed. So I made a movie about music wearing my face. The kid on screen was a version of me filtered through Minneapolis myth. Gifted, stubborn, learning to be a man who doesn't use hurt as fuel to hurting others. Purple Rain, the film, was not autobiography. It was allegory. But the feelings were nonfiction. When the camera rolled on the club scenes, we weren't miming. We were playing. Real mics, real amps, real time. You can't fake electricity. If you felt your chest tighten during that guitar solo at the end, it's because electricity met testimony. I bent over the fretboard like prayer because sometimes prayer needs an amplifier. Songs that built rooms. Let's Go Crazy opens like a sermon and ends like a chase scene. When doves cry, I tore the bass line out so space could talk in. Emptiness became a drum. Purple Rain, a church in 6/8 where forgiveness wears purple and the last solo writes its own eulogy. I left air in the mix so your heart could sit between the notes and decide who would want it to be tonight. Clothes as chords. The trench, the ruffles, the heels, not costume, arrangement. Lace over leather is how a diminished chord feels when it resolves into joy. I wore contrast because I am one, tender and sharp, Sunday morning and Saturday night colors. The tour. A ritual with tickets. We didn't do shows, we did rituals with the seats. Doors open, lights down, the first chord is a doorbell to a house where grief dances and desire behaves. Tradition says the encore is last. I treated the encore like the real beginning, where sweat turned into scripture and a crowd into a choir. The aftershows? If you know, you know. Small rooms, late hours, the set list, handwritten in the moment, standards bent around funk, funk sneaking into jazz, a sly riff shaking hands with a Joni cloud. I collected teachers. Hendrix Ghosts, James Brown Stops, Santana Stamina, Joni's chords that looked like snowflakes under a microscope. I learned from all of them and sounded like none of them. That's the assignment. Build a lineage and then be yourself inside it. Studio Alchemy, LinnDrum and Leather Soles. I love machines because they're honest. The Linn LM1 told the truth about quantization. I taught it to swing anyway. Stack claps like a marching band. Detune the snare until it soaks. Let the kick hit like a velvet hammer. Synths? Pads like fog, leads like neon handwriting. Guitars? Clean until not, then a scream that kept its vowels. I tracked most instruments because my head hears arrangements like a map. But I used the band like color I couldn't mix alone. Wendy's voicings, Lisa's corridors, Fink's chrome, Bobby's law, Mark's glue. I wasn't a one-man band. I was a many-man man who loved the chemistry of we. Writing rooms for other voices. A good song is a house. Sometimes I build it for someone else to live in. Nothing compares to you. Rooms made of ache. Manic Monday? A sunny kitchen that knows the dishes can wait. I Feel for You? Stairs built for dancing. Giving songs away isn't loss. It's botany. Your garden in another yard. Minneapolis as a kingdom. Paisley Park wasn't an address. It was a constitution. Studios wired like synapses, halls from funk to film, rooms where you could walk from a string section to a drum machine without putting your jacket back on. I invited the world to a city that behaved like a chord, and the city answered by becoming a genre. I kept the place busy. Vaults aren't silence, they're winter. Ideas sleeping, waiting for spring. Not everything needed to bloom in public. Some seeds were for me and God. The revolution evolves. Bands of families, families change. I loved the revolution enough to let it be the right band for the right time. Seasons turned, new players came. The new power generation waited in the wings while Parade played with cinema, and Sign of the Times painted a mural of worlds inside worlds. Splitting the bill with Sheila A. and letting Sheena borrow the spotlight, collaboration wasn't charity, it was ecology. Performance as proof. I never asked you to believe me. I asked you to watch. If the guitar didn't testify, I learned a new language overnight and brought a better witness tomorrow. I rehearsed until you could set your watch by my turn. Heels don't forgive weak ankles. Mine learned not to be weak. The stage was my courtroom. I presented evidence nightly. Exhibit A, tight man. Exhibit B, loose hips. Exhibit C, a bridge that goes somewhere you didn't know you needed to visit. Verdict, guilty of making you feel alive. Fame's math versus my algebra. Charts count, I measure. I measure a gasp in the second verse and the quiet on the walk to the parking lot because nobody wants to talk and break the spell. I measure the letters you write saying a song helped you call your mother back. I measure the way a crowd listens to a new song like it's already a memory. That arithmetic keeps me honest. The next storm. After Purple Rain, people wanted repeats. I wanted revolutions. New grooves, new hair, new shapes of silence. The label heard dollars. I heard destiny. The distance between those two is where the next chapter begins. Names and ownership, battles and symbols, freedom dressed as controversy. I stayed soft where it mattered, on ballads that know your secrets, and sharp where it counted, on contracts that tried to misunderstand me. If you thought the ruffles were a distraction, you missed the blade inside the lace. I am Prince. I turned the city into weather and asked lightning to keep the beat. The sky said yes.
Contracts look like partnerships until you read the fine print with your future in mind. I read mine. I didn't like the ending. The name that wasn't a word. A name is a promise. If the contract owns your promise, it owns you. So I became a symbol, not a stunt, a strategy. People laughed, typed the artist formerly known as, made jokes in boardrooms where art is a line item under marketing. I smiled and kept recording. A symbol can't be mispronounced. A symbol isn't trapped in a filing cabinet. A symbol is a door. I wrote slave on my face because paperwork can be chains with spell check. It wasn't bitterness, it was documentation. Artists had been signing away futures for an advance and a fruit basket. I wanted a different math. Own your masters, own your tomorrow. Masters, publishing, and the quiet riot. The day you finish a song, there are two stories, the one the world hears and the one the contract tells you. Masters are the spine. Publishing is the blood. If you don't own either, you're visiting yourself through a window. I learned to say no to lunch and yes to leverage. Release schedules got creative. The gold experience sparkled while the paperwork soaked. I kept the vault humming. The label counted quarters. I counted control. The new power generation, groove with papers. A band should sound like Permission. The new power generation did. Horns that could grin, drums that could sue for damages, keys that wrote novels in one chord. We didn't just play tight, we played right. On top of the beat when the party needed glitter, behind it when the truth needed hips. I let Rosie, Sonny, Michael B., Morris, Tommy, Levi, Tony M., Mate, each bring a color I didn't have in my pocket. Rap on my tracks wasn't trend chasing, it was conversation. Funk never needed permission to talk to hip-hop. Diamonds, pearls, and other minerals. Diamonds and Pearls wasn't just a title, it was a thesis. Hard edges with light inside. We gave you ballads that could hold your head and grooves that could make your rent forget it was due. Cream, Get Off, polite titles? Not always. Polite records? Never. The Most Beautiful Girl in the World, independent release, my timing, my math. It went everywhere because love does not ask for permission slips. People said, you can't do that. I said, watch. Paisley Park, nation state of sound. I didn't leave Minneapolis to find power. I built Paisley Park to generate it. Studios, sound stages, vaults, kitchens, a hallway that smells like the first day of tour, infrastructure for imagination. We tracked a string section, cut a 12-inch, rehearsed the tour, filmed a video, and ate soup without leaving the building. That isn't excess. That's efficiency for a man who writes more than he sleeps. Glam slam of business. Clubs in Minneapolis, Miami, LA, not vanity projects. Distribution for groove. If radio took the scenic route, we cut a highway. I built places where music could work undressed, no format police, just bodies and downbeats. The gold experience, shiny with teeth. You can polish rebellion until it reflects the star, but I prefer records that bite when they kiss. The gold experience glittered with an argument tucked inside. Freedom sounds expensive until you dance to it. I wrote hooks like welcome mats and bridges like escape routes. The Symbol Years, Ciphers and Sermons. The Symbol albums were puzzles you could dance to. 7 braided prophecy with pop. Sexy MF flirted and rhymed like the band owed you $1,000. My Name is Prince reminded the room that a crown isn't a hat, it's a habit. I mixed Minneapolis slaps with Middle Eastern scales, Detroit chrome with church organs, because borders are boring and groove is a passport. On radio, race, and the format cage. If a song is too black for pop and too pop for black radio, the problem isn't the song, it's the fence. I made records that pointed at fences until they fell over from embarrassment. When the call-out research said confusing, the crowd said, run it back. I listened to the crowd. The work ethic in lace. I wore lace, yes, but the schedule wore steel. Rehearsal at noon, tracking at 5, show at 9, after show at 2, gospel at sunrise. We edited arrangements like chefs edit menus, keep the flavor, change the salt. I cut bridges on airplanes, wrote verses in dressing rooms, and tuned snares by prayer. The calendar wasn't busy, it was blessed. Lawsuits, loopholes, and liner notes. I learned law the way I learned guitar, note by note. Contract up, deliver what's required, and keep your best selves for the next chapter. When they said I couldn't, I said watch again. When they counted units, I counted impact. Babies made, fights ended, mornings saved. Liner notes became sermons. Credit the crew, thank the saints, tuck a lesson in the margins. If you read them, you got the manual. Own your work, pay your people, rehearse your truth. Fashion as freedom papers. Ruffles, gold, chainmail headscarves, eyes lined like punctuation marks, clothes as verbs. If a contract tried to tell me who I was, the mirror told me who I am. Heels demand balance. I like that. Symbolic and practical. You can't slouch in 4 inches. Try it. Mentorship, not nostalgia. I kept an eye on the kids. Larry Graham, Maceo, Morris, Chaka, Bay, Janelle, Moore. I gave game privately and applause publicly. Legacy is not a museum. It's a relay. Take the baton. Don't drop the beat. The internet arrived. Distribution without permission. When the N-Web knocked, I didn't ask who sent it. I opened. NPG Music Club, direct to the people before direct had a newsletter. Subscriptions, exclusives. The press called me eccentric. The future called back and said early. I pulled my catalog where the math felt disrespectful, then put it where the respect looked better. Not petty, pedagogy. I was teaching labels and platforms a class called Don't Play the Artist. The Gospel According to Groove. Faith moved to the front row. I cut profanity and kept pleasure. I learned how to throw a party that didn't charge your conscience. If you came to a late show and left lighter than you arrived, then the set list did what Scripture does. Convict, comfort, change. Minneapolis still. I could have disappeared into kingdoms with warmer winters. I stayed where the snow writes haikus on your driveway. Minneapolis gave me edge and echo, a quiet that made room for the noise of my choosing. Paisley kept the windows lit. The point of the fight. People focused on the word slave and missed the sentence. Artists deserve freedom papers. I didn't demand special rules. I demanded good ones. Transparent, fair, and future-proof. Your masters, your name, your voice. That's not rebellion. That's literacy. The symbol years end not with a peace treaty, but with a principle proven in public. You can be independent and still be inevitable. The band is hot, the vault is deeper, the label is a chapter, not the book. The next act
is Rain on the world's biggest stage, a guitar solo that leaves orbit, a final decade of surprise after surprise, and a goodbye that asks for reverence, not rumor. I am Prince. I didn't change my name to escape myself. I changed it to find the part nobody could own.
The sky doesn't always cooperate with a show. Mine did. Super Bowl XLI, Heaven's Lighting Tech. Miami, rain that wouldn't quit. I asked one question: can you make it rain harder? Purple lights, wet stage, live band, let's go crazy, baby I'm a star, purple rain. The guitar cut water like it was silk. I learned long ago, danger sharpens focus. Heels on a slick stage are a contract with balance. I signed in cursive. Hall of Fame, talk shows, and a solo that left orbit. On the Rock Hall tribute, I let a solo walk off the stage and land in the rafters. Telecaster like a lightning rod, band like a runway. On late-night TV, I treated two songs like church and a cliff. If you were in the room, you saw a principle. Practice makes miracles look casual. Late-era tours, piano, and a microphone. As the years turned, I stripped the show to piano and voice. No armor, no walls, just wood, strings, and breath. I told stories the way chords confess. A set could start with a hymn, detour through a standard, and end with a grin in 12/8. Minimal isn't less, it's closer. Direct to the people. NPG Music Club, live streams, surprise drops. I didn't wait for permission. Subscriptions, vault nights, websites before they were cool, takedowns when the math was crooked. Call it stubborn? I call it stewardship. An artist's job is to protect the channel between heart and listener. If middlemen add static, tune the signal. Mentor mode. I gave game to the young ones. Studio etiquette, publishing 101, stagecraft, the sacred science of rehearsal. Legacy isn't the past. It's what you put in other people's hands. Health, quiet rooms, and editing life. Handled with care. There were flights I didn't finish, and headlines I didn't write. Keep gentleness here. Remember the band, the staff, the family, the fans. The circle is larger than a rumor. I asked for privacy in the music. Give it to the man, too. Paisley, forever. I built Paisley Park as a living instrument. Let it play on. Archives, concerts, scholarships, young musicians learning that a metronome is a kind of love. The vault isn't greed. It's gardening. Release what's ripe. Let the seedlings grow. What I want you to keep. Own your masters. Ownership is oxygen. Rehearse joy. Tight bands make loose nights. Edit the deal, not the dream. Style is harmony you can wear. Faith is groove with memory. Practice until an eyebrow can conduct a room. If you play, tune your instrument and your contracts. If you listen, dance like the downbeat is a thank you note. If you build, make the back of the drawer beautiful. I am Prince Rogers Nelson. Wherever a snare drum says let's and a choir of strangers answers go, I'm there. Purple, precise, and smiling. Forever in the key of yes.